Attila is a sociologist, economist, and historian, founding director of the Karl Polányi Center for Global Social Studies, where he was director from 2014 to 2022. He's associate professor at Corvinus University in Budapest and senior researcher at the Demographic Research Institute, where I know he's been doing some excellent work on intra-European migration. Attila is also the editor of the well-known Hungarian left journal Eszmélet, which was founded by Lukács. He's the author of the book on the East-West Slope, Globalization, Nationalism, Racism, and Discourses on Central and Eastern Europe, which was published by Central European University Press. And his newest book is The Migration Turn in Eastern Europe, a Global Historical and Sociological Analysis, which has recently come out from Palgrave-Macmillan. So Attila, please go ahead.
Thank you very much indeed. And it's been a very interesting thing to listen to all the other speakers, because I think a lot of issues have already been raised and excellent insights has been given. So as a final speaker, I would like to add to this discussion certain elements. First, I would like to make some kind of a theoretical comment, and then I would focus on what has been going on in terms of development within Eastern Europe. Can we speak about a common region, or we are seeing very different trajectories? And very importantly, I would like to reflect on Hungary's position and what is the material background of Hungary's position and how it is actually maneuvering, because there might be some kind of misunderstanding here. But of course, these are going to be all questions, because what we definitely need is, as you can see, the new, very concrete, at the same time complex global historical analysis, and then still we are lacking this in these regards. So the first thing, how do we understand the recent changes globally in terms of socioeconomic history? And I think what it reminds me as a turning point, in case we go back a little bit more than 100 years. And then, because there was this very famous or infamous debate about ultra-imperialism, where Kautsky was suggesting that global capital, in terms of some kind of agreement, can manage within one imperial system, it can manage the whole world, and it can actually solve many of its internal problems. And then very quickly, Buharin came with his book on imperialism in 1914, and he immediately made the point that knowing the nature of capitalism, that more or less impossible. And then he argued that there is no chance for ultra-imperialism, but there can be only some kind of capitalist blocks fighting each other. And then he started speaking about Asia bloc, Europe bloc, and then America bloc. And then this would go on. Now, very interesting and very importantly, Lenin also followed some of these lines. When he wrote about the unification of Europe, he was making exactly the same point. So in that sense, that's very important. So in case we look at what happened since 1980s, is that there has been an attempt by the US to create an ultra-imperialist order. This was called, a unified center of a global market, plus very importantly, a complete hegemony of the US and organizing this all around the world. This was, of course, an attempt. And of course, this geopolitical and geoeconomic order has been extremely problematic because by definition, it was not able to handle many of the various interests of the different countries, including not small countries, but big countries like Russia, China, and so on and so on. Now, this kind of an attempt started fading in the early 2000s very clearly. I think that actually the situation, because the heyday of this ultra-imperialist attempt is really the early 2000s. This is based on an amazing mobility of foreign capital. It goes up into unprecedented levels in case you look at it historically. It went up back actually so high levels as before the First World War in a lot of ways. And then it was crumbling because the geopolitical system was also crumbling. I think the failure in Iraq, Afghanistan was a systemic failure. It was not just an accidental point where the US could not manage certain things, but it showed that it was not able to handle conflicts it generated, and it was not able to handle this. And then very soon came the 2008 crisis, for which there was no answer beyond starting pumping money into the economy at such a massive scale, which was unprecedented. Of course, this went back to some debates in comparison with the Great Crisis in the 1930s and so on and so on. I don't want to go into this. Now, what's the point here? What I'm trying to make is that this crumbling of the US hegemonic geopolitical ultra-imperialist attempt, what does it lead to? And I think there are several outcomes, and I think we still don't know it. One is what has already been mentioned very wisely, chaos. There can be a massive chaos. I think that was the understanding of Wallerstein at the end of his life. He was constantly talking about this chaotic period coming, unmanageable. The second option is that, of course, after the US hegemony, another hegemony is going to come into power. A lot of people point that China is able to reorganize it, but of course it takes a whole lot of time, a whole lot of energy, and then the whole system is absolutely unclear whether China is willing to take this at all. In my understanding, they are not attempting to have a single global hegemonic position because they would not, it would not fit into that strategy what they have been following up till now. We can also see this, nonetheless, I think this blockification or the new blocks re-emerging, that's a big chance. And I can see that a whole lot of moves are going on. The recent development in BRICS, Russia's maneuvering in this, China is maneuvering in a lot of ways in this. So there is some kind of a counter-hegemonic bloc is emerging within this same system. And then this is going to be a new scenario. The point here is that this is a period of dramatic instability, a dramatic increase and intensification of conflicts, plus, very importantly, a dramatic reorganization. All states are going to be shaken in this period. If this goes on, we are talking not something minor, we are talking about something very big. There are some estimates that this kind of new security blocks and supply chains means the redirection of 25% of the foreign trade. If somebody has an understanding of scale, what the redirection it means and what kind of a challenge it means, then I think we should be really horrified by this development, because of course this cannot go without conflict. This resecuritization of capitalism and reorganizing the supply chains and the trade and then minerals and so on and so on and so on. So that I think is super, super important. Now the next point I would like to go in, and this was my starting point. The next point I'm having is, of course, what about Eastern Europe? And I'm not going to repeat this, which has been eloquently told by Veronica and Anna-Maria as well, this kind of a dependency problem. Yes, there is a dramatic dependency problem in Eastern Europe, but I think the problems are even bigger than just dependency. And I will try to make this clear. The first thing which we need to observe in semi-peripheric areas like Eastern Europe is a dramatic contradiction around the state. The states are in a very peculiar position in semi-peripheral countries because, especially in an ex-socialist region where there are high social expectations, is how to please capital, how to please foreign capital, and maintain some kind of a social system at the same time in an ongoing demographic decline of the whole region, where the demographic fragility of the region is increasing dramatically. I think this is the only solution for this in the capitalist framework is to have a very stable and high level of growth, because then enough income is generated to solve and then to handle some of the tensions emerging. Otherwise, in case they get into some kind of decline economically or anything, then their troubles are unsolvable in a whole lot of ways. And what I think is important now for most East European countries is that how they understand how this economic growth can be maintained. Now, there is an illusion, structurally speaking, could be a structural illusion, that Eastern Europe is very homogeneous, but Eastern Europe is absolutely not homogeneous. And these countries are following very different trajectories for a very good reason, because of course these countries are small countries which can be influenced by all kinds of historical linkages in various ways. So in case we look at it, I just want to go into this very quickly. I would differentiate between some kind of a Central European pattern, like the Czech, the Slovakian, the Hungarian, and the Slovenian pattern, which is, as Bola Grešković put it once, they were aiming at some kind of embedded neoliberalism. That is to say that after socialism, they tried to maintain some kind of a social welfare system, while other countries completely abandoned it. Then we have another version, and even Poland is in that, in my understanding, Poland, Romania, Albania, which reduced much of the welfare systems. Poland is in between in a lot of ways, and actually it's trying to come back in certain measures and family support and so on and so on. But for a while it abandoned that. Now this became an emigrant Eastern Europe, that is to say, but with a very important difference between the Central European and this one. The Central European is much more dependent on foreign direct investment. And actually, very interestingly, Poland and some other countries are much less dependent on that. And then there were two other types. I don't want to go into this. Of course, the Baltic republics, which were also falling into two parts, Latvia and Lithuania being very different from Estonia in a lot of ways, plus very importantly, the failure countries like Ukraine and Moldova, which failed completely as early as the 1990s, and they were not able to come back at all with a viable strategy, and they have been in the hands of struggling local elites. Now, the point what I'm trying to make is, and now I'm trying to focus, and this is the last point, I'm trying to focus on my own country, Hungary, which is, of course, one of the most tantalizing countries in the whole region. Now, in case we look at possible material background for the Hungarian policies, is its amazingly unprecedented dependence on foreign direct investment. So in case you look at this comparatively, Hungary is a world recorder in a lot of ways, how much it is dependent on foreign direct investment. In certain years, the net inflow of FDI can be as high as the total GDP of the country, which of course is a mixture. It's not just investment, it's a lot of financial moves are also happening here. I'm just trying to point out that it is extremely dependent on that. Even in case we take all the big waves out of these developments. Now here comes something very important, because that tantalized me, that I could find as some kind of a very specific thing. Serbia is not that different in a lot of ways. And then I started looking for policy documents in Hungary, whether my assumption can be proven or not. And then even luckily recently, the new economic minister became rather outspoken. So I could gather two things. One is the foreign policy document of the country, which actually very clearly, crystal clearly argues that it is trying to move between different blocks it is trying to capitalize, it's a kind of they're talking in a kind of a network language, that they would like to be a node in these networks. So they are trying to connect these things, and then Hungary should rely on this maneuvering between the different blocks. The other point is that they would like to rely more foreign direct investment, but not from the EU. Now that's very interesting, because what's going on, and then this is a very recent discussion going in the circles of the Hungarian government, is that they say that they are fed up with the EU because it is coming, of course it's representing capital, I mean, that's not a question, but they have political conditions. And they don't like these political conditions, because that would hinder their neoconservative, kind of neo-nationalist, kind of ideological framework, in which, first of all, these conflicts are okay, plus they really don't want to see the tutelage of the European Union over the economic policy of Hungary, and they would like to go beyond that. And now they started talking about that they would like to become some kind of foreign direct investment machines, and going into the world and getting as much foreign investment as possible, because they argue it's even better than the subsidy of the EU, because, you know, this is excellent because it is coming into the exact points of the economy where it is needed, plus it is producing sustainable revenues, I mean capital revenues, right, which is going to partially help the Hungarian budget as well to maintain certain things. So I think what they are having in mind in this, that they would like to have this super foreign direct investment kind of a machinery in which they are making the nodes and the new networks, and not the EU. And this is how they would like to get out of this. Now, in case we take this seriously, then I think it can be a reasonably good answer why Hungary is actually, at least in Marxist terms, why Hungary is actually following what it is following. Plus, one more thing I would like to add as a last point is, of course, that this is also a shift, and then we can hear it. Even we could see it in the speech of Vladimir Putin as well. So there is this new buzzword of looking for infrastructure investment, and then in that sense, now here comes one, and this is the very last question. What does it mean in case they want to have more foreign direct investment? Now, it can mean a lot of things. And actually, we have some evidence for various things. One is that this is the way how the dominance of the Western foreign capital, they are trying to counterbalance this. That is to say, they are playing out these different fractions of the capital to each other. Or it is for a cooperative thing. And actually, Chinese investment is not really competing with the Western investment, but it is built together, right? And I think one of the key things what we need to figure out in case we want to understand the policy development here is which is going to be the main tendency in this development. Finally, how much embeddedness and socialism comes out of this? Now, there I have enormous doubts and questions. I think more foreign direct investment and being a super hub of foreign capital from the point of view of Hungarian workers and employees and the society and even development. And I have very big questions to think about. But otherwise, thank you very much.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.